even you who wrote the book, maybe going into it, you didn't consider yourself an expert, but you did it anyways. And through that process, you learned, and at the end, you had an outcome, right? And I think that's a lesson everyone can take away. Like you can never be prepared enough, or you'll never feel prepared enough. And so you just have to take action. Welcome to Teach Me Real Estate Investing, a show where I share my personal journey and the challenges I face as an investor. I invite industry experts to share their wisdom and advice to help me overcome these adversities, with the hope that it'll help you on your own personal journey. I'm your host, Saugat Ghimire, and I hope you enjoy the episode. Hi everyone. Welcome to another episode. Today I have the opportunity to speak with Zeona McIntyre, and we're going to be talking about medium-term rentals. Zeona, welcome to the show, and thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much. You said my name right, so you get lots of bonus points right there off the bat.
I've been listening to, I guess, a lot of your podcast episodes, so it's kind of drilled into my mind. So before we start talking about medium-term rentals, let's talk a little bit about you. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into real estate investing, and where you are in your real estate investing journey today?
Yeah, well, it's definitely a journey. I think that's important for people to know, is that I feel like my strategy, especially in the last couple of years, has changed a lot because the real estate industry has changed a lot. So it's important to be flexible and be able to pivot and be creative. So, if you're not happy with where you are right now, just know that it's a journey and we're in it for the long haul as investors. So it can change. I got into real estate investing totally by accident. Some of you might know that my original story is that I heard about it from a friend in 2011 who got laid off.
Okay.
And he was trying to figure out what he was going to do with this really expensive apartment he had in New York City. And that was just around the time when he heard about Airbnb. And so he was telling me, like, I'm going to go travel, and I heard about this thing, and I'm going to rent out my apartment. It should be fine. And 1 month of travel turned into an entire year. At the end of the year, he told me that he made $50,000 off an apartment that he didn't own. So that really got my wheels turning, and it got me to try to do it myself. So I thought it was just a little side hustle, no big deal, and then it turned into my whole life. So from there, it's just kind of grown.
Yeah, I guess that happens. Yeah. So
Sure.
For folks that don't know you, right, you are the co-host of the Invest to Fi podcast, and you recently wrote a book for BiggerPockets called 30-Day Stay, a real estate investor's guide to mastering the medium-term rental. So before we get into all that, you had a friend who bought had an apartment, did Airbnb, was successful. How then did you end up getting into your first deal? Can we talk about that and maybe some of the challenges that went along with that very first deal?
Yeah, so I think first deal is kind of a little bit different in this scenario. So my first deal was really just the home I lived in, right? So that's the cool thing about Airbnb, is that you can just rent even your own bedroom. You could rent, a spare room and all of that. So I was lucky enough that my roommate was moving out and I just had a rental. I didn't own it. And I decided that I would sublet on Airbnb, which we call arbitrage now. But there wasn't a word for it then.
Right.
And so I did that for a while. But if we're talking about the first deal that I owned, it was 2 years later.
Okay.
So the way that I got into buying a property is what I like to call Airbnb training wheels, right? It's like real estate training wheels using Airbnb. And what was so cool is that I was arbitraging. So I was renting an apartment that was 5 minutes away from the apartment that I was going to buy. And it was a very similar apartment. It was a 1-bedroom, 5 minutes away. And what I had been renting mine for, that I was re-renting out, it was like $1,100. That's what it cost me. But then what I was making off of it was between $1,700 and $4,000 a month.
Wow.
So I already knew the numbers really well. I'd had the place over a year. And so then when I went to buy a property, that property was 5 minutes away. It was a 1-bedroom, same. And my mortgage was only going to be $950. And so I was like, wow, well, I was paying $1,100 before. This is a no-brainer, right? I know exactly what it will make and everything. So that worked out really well for me.
Yeah. Fast forward to today, what does your portfolio look like?
Yeah, so now I have 11 units. We just sold one, but I'm under contract for another, so I very quickly put the pawns back in place. But I'm invested in 4 states, soon to be 5, and I am kind of changing my strategy. I think one thing that's so awesome about writing a book about medium-term rentals is that I got to really deep dive in it, and I thought, well, I don't know that I ever thought that I knew it all. But I learned a lot since the book even came out. It's such a cool new kind of concept. So there's a lot of upside, and I'm really excited to dig in.
Yeah, I think there's a lesson there for all our audience. I think a lot of people get stuck in learning, analysis paralysis, and no one really takes action. And I think what you said there was key, right? Like even you who wrote the book, maybe going into it, you didn't consider yourself an expert, but you did it anyways. And through that process, you learned, and at the end, you had an outcome, right? And I think that's a lesson everyone can take away. Like you can never be prepared enough, or you'll never feel prepared enough. And so you just have to take action. Your properties that you have today, are they all on Airbnb, or are they long-term rentals, medium-term rentals? Talk to us a little bit about the strategy that you're using.
Yeah, so I've diversified twofold. I'm diversified by area, so if there's a big tornado that comes through St. Louis, it's not going to knock all my properties out. I'm also diversified by, I was going to call it asset class, but actually it's more like rental strategy, right? So I have some long-term units, I have some medium-term, and I have some short-term. And I'm really focused in on the medium-term. That's what I'm feeling the most excited about going forward. But it is nice to have a variety because there's seasonality, and my long terms are not affected by that. So it's nice to have certain stabilities in my portfolio for when things change.
Yeah. I think, in my opinion, I think you've become quite successful, right? What would you say was the one key factor that helped you become successful? So newer investors who are looking to get into it, what should they have in mind as they're starting their own real estate journey?
Yeah, for me, I think it's continuing to keep a beginner's mind. And luckily, I think after just being in this industry for so long, I can sort of see things coming maybe a little bit easier than other people. And so I can pivot a little bit faster than they. But I don't feel very stuck in saying, I already know it all. I don't need to change. I'm always like, okay, what's this other person saying? Maybe there's something to that, So it's just keeping your eyes open and talking to a lot of people on the ground and always learning, being a sponge.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about your book, right? You recently released a book with BiggerPockets, 30-Day Stay. Can you tell us a little bit of the backstory? Like, how did you end up writing the book, essentially? Like, how come you were the one?
Yeah, so way back in 2017, I was first on the BiggerPockets podcast. They've been on there 3 times, I think, now, just their real estate one. They've got a bunch of podcasts now. But back then, they were just starting to release books. And they had asked me to do a short-term rental book, seeing if I had any interest. And I kind of fumbled that opportunity. I didn't take it as seriously as I should have, and then it didn't happen. And 2 years later, Avery Carl came out with their short-term rental book. And I think when I saw that, it was really hard. I was like, oh man, I'm at a place in my life where I'm not as excited about short-term rentals, but I could have wrote that book and it could have changed my life. And I messed it up. And so as I'm like having this experience, and I think it was probably 2020 that her book fully came out, but I knew about it early. I was thinking about, what is it that I could write? What am I excited about now? And as 2020 evolved, that's where I really found the medium-term rental strategy. It was born out of COVID for me, out of a necessity to pivot when people were not traveling for vacation anymore. Right? Like I had to do something new to keep my places occupied. And when I went to BiggerPockets with the idea, I was just like, this is really niche. Like, are they going to be interested in this? It was very odd. So I pitched it at the 2021 BiggerPockets conference, and yeah, they ended up going for it. And I really think it was a leap of faith on their part, because all the research they did was saying, well, this is not really a thing yet. Nobody's really talking about this. And none of us, I think, knew that the next year, 2022, would just explode with medium-term rental chat. So we got very lucky to be ahead of the curve on that.
Yeah, that's incredible. Who do you would you say is the book geared towards? Who should buy this book?
Yeah, I think the book can be for a lot of different investors.
Mm-hmm.
It can be for the long-term investor who's saying, you know, I'm really just wanting to see more cash flow.
Right.
It can be for the short-term investor who's saying, gosh, I want more stability in my homes, especially through a recession where I'm thinking less people are traveling for vacation.
Right.
It will really give them that. And it could be for somebody totally brand new, because we said, I wrote the book with Sarah Weaver, we said that we really wanted the book to be actionable, not just conceptual. And so we wrote it in a way that it's bite-sized pieces, but from the beginning to the end, you can go out and buy a property and just take the steps, and you're going to be good to go.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, I really want to dive into the topic of medium-term rentals. Before we get there, could we define for the audience, like, what do we mean exactly when we say medium-term rental? How is it, I guess, different from the other forms?
Yeah, so a medium-term rental, the reason we called our book 30-Day Stay is that 30 days is kind of that magic number, right? So anything under 30 days is considered a short-term rental. And then 30 days plus is a medium term if it's furnished. So a long term is generally unfurnished, and it's year to year.
Right.
So medium term rentals end up being an average of 3 months. That's the most common one we see. So just kind of letting people know the range.
Yeah. And when or why might someone consider using a medium-term rental strategy as opposed to the other? I guess I'm trying to understand where it shines compared to the other strategies, and maybe some of the drawbacks, if we can discuss that as well.
Yeah, so against a long-term rental, it shines because right now when people go out, they're looking at pretty high prices still and high interest rates. So when you buy a property that's a long-term rental, very often the rent that your tenant would pay is not even enough to cover your mortgage.
Yeah.
Right? So medium term gives you a lot more cash flow, and it allows people to finally have that, right? They can buy a property and it's going to be an investment that will give them cash flow. So that's the advantage there. The advantage over short-term rentals is that now more and more places are outlawing short-term rentals, and medium term doesn't have the same regulations. They're basically lumped in with long-term rentals.
Right.
And so you just don't really have to deal with worrying about, oh my gosh, is next year is this city going to say, okay, no more, and you have to totally change what you're doing.
Yeah. So it sounds like we kind of have best of both worlds, right? So in comparison to long term, you can generate a little bit more cash flow, right? Because you have that shorter lease shorter, I guess, leasing terms, and you also have a furnished apartment, so people usually pay a little bit more, but you aren't bound by those short-term rental regulations, which I think is growing. The rules and regulations around that are becoming stricter and stricter in many areas of the country. If I was to
absolutely.
consider doing a medium-term rental as a strategy, how would I find tenants for that? Right? Is it the same way you would find it for long-term or short-term, or is there a different way that you would advise for people to find tenants for their medium-term rentals?
So it's a little bit different, and it kind of depends on who you want to serve as your tenants. So the very basic way, and what we mostly talk about in our book, is using Airbnb and similar sites, so Vrbo, and then using Furnish Finder. So Furnish Finder is a website that is primarily marketing towards medical professionals, traveling nurses, but those two had been enough to really keep us completely occupied. Completely occupied. I always get like, vacancy, occupancy.
Right.
So with that alone, that was enough. And now I'm learning that there's a whole nother deeper layer to corporate housing. And so it can be corporate contracts from construction companies, film industries, government contracts, and even insurance contracts. So people that need to be in another house while their home is getting some work on for whatever reason. Lots more natural disasters and things happening. And those insurance contracts pay the most.
Okay.
And so if you just want to do Airbnb and Furnish Finder, you can be occupied. But if you want to make the most money you possibly can make, you have to do a little bit more work. So that could be a bit more websites and work behind it.
Yeah. Digging into that a little bit. So let's say I want to set up a contract like that with, these insurance companies, for example. How might I go about this? Like, how do I find these people to reach out to, and what do these contracts typically look like? Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so that's something I'm still digging into and learning about. And I'm really going to dedicate this year, 2023, to learning more, because I think this is a really important space with a lot of upside. So just to give an example, I have a friend in Atlanta where he has a 5-bedroom home. His all-in costs, like his mortgage and his monthly utilities, end up being around $2,500. But he's got an insurance contract on that's almost $8,000.
Wow.
So he's able to cash flow $5,000 or more, which is absolutely insane.
Yeah.
So if you can master a strategy like this, you can have less homes and you can do it really well.
Yeah.
Right? So that's where I'm trying to go with my portfolio. So finding those, we're using like 7 or 8 websites, and we're really just kind of testing them out. So if people want to know more, definitely have them reach out. I can send them everything I know up until the moment. I'm a big sharer.
Right.
But it is definitely a work in progress on our side.
Yeah. I feel like I have to have you back in a year so that we can learn all the secrets that, or maybe not secrets, but all these strategies that you learn over the next year. If I'm looking to implement the medium-term rental strategy, are there certain types of properties or certain locations that you would advise that I look for when I want to do the medium-term rental strategy?
Yeah, so if you're going to do just the very basic Airbnb and Furnish Finder, you can do that with 1 and 2 bedroom units. So those can be condos, they can be like a duplex, multi-unit, anything like that. But if you're really wanting to go after insurance, you want to have these bigger homes.
Okay.
So there's a teacher in the space that says 5 to 8 bedrooms. I think 4 bedrooms could work. Even I've heard 3 bedrooms work in certain markets, but it wants to be a single family home and it needs to be bigger. So just kind of deciding where you want to play. And for me, at least now, because I'm really wanting to test this strategy, I'm going for the bigger homes and selling off some of my...
If you're getting value from this video, I'd really appreciate it if you could hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. It'll let YouTube know to put this video in front of more people so that they can also learn something from it. Thank you, and let's get back to the show.
little ones.
Yeah. Do you know why that might be? Because when I think about, just general single family homes, most of them tend to be 3-4 bedrooms, right? But the 5 to 8 are like much bigger homes. Why is it that insurance companies tend to gravitate towards those types of homes rather than, if I'm living in a 3-4 bedroom property and it gets damaged and I need to be relocated, for example, I'd imagine that they'd give me a similar home to stay at while my property is being rehabbed, right? So yeah, I'm curious why it is that people are like we're noticing that they tend to go with the 5 to 8 bedrooms.
So 5 to 8 bedrooms is a twofold. This particular teacher does short-term rentals as well. So again, in that space, it's about limiting competition. So the bigger the house, the less people that you have with similar size houses. When you're doing short-term rentals, you can put in 2 families. You can charge a lot more money because they're willing to share and pay more to be together. So that's sort of where that's born out of. But also, it's the competition in the insurance space. So 1 and 2 bedrooms, there's just so much inventory.
Right.
Now, as you start getting into the bigger homes, here's an example, is that a year or 2 ago, we had a big fire here in my town of Boulder, Colorado. and about 1,000 homes burnt down, which is incredible. It's a lot. And I thought, okay, well, I have these 2 one-bedroom apartments. Like, people will be knocking down my door for places to stay. But I didn't hear anything from insurance. And the reason is these people had homes and they need to be put into homes, right? They need a big enough space for their family. And so they are going to put you in like-kind homes. But if they have a 4-bedroom home, if they have a 5-bedroom home, they want to be in a nicer space, they have a little bit of choice. So they give them a certain amount of stipend, but then they get to go choose where they want to be. So for that example in Atlanta that my friends got the insurance contract, it's only 2 people living in that 5-bedroom house. Wow. So it's not like it's, packed in or anything like that.
Right. So I guess that covers the property types, right? We want larger number of rooms in the house, bigger houses. Are there locations that people should consider also? Like, one thing I know is the medical industry is one of the biggest, I guess, has the largest number of tenants, I guess, that would be looking for furnished homes, right? So when I go to Furnished Finders, it's mostly like nurses, traveling nurses that are looking for housing. So in my mind, it's like maybe it needs to be close to a hospital, but I'd like to hear your thoughts on, if I'm evaluating a property and I want to use the medium-term rental strategy, like what kind of locations should I be looking out for?
Yeah, so if your property is going to be 1 to 2 bedrooms, then I would say try to be within 5 miles of 2 hospitals.
Okay.
And the reason being is that there's certain markets that have hospital clusters. Denver has some of this. We see it in Cleveland, St. Louis. There are places where you might have 4 or 5 hospitals kind of right in one area. And that brings in an incredible amount of traveling professionals. So that is a really safe play if you're doing those smaller places. Bigger than that, if you're going for insurance, it doesn't necessarily matter. I see them being more popular in the suburbs, but being adjacent to a city is helpful because of the density, right? So there's more opportunity for people who are needing a home. Yeah, so it kind of just depends. Sometimes people gravitate around universities because they do bring in a lot of teachers and students and families. So there's kind of a lot of different tenants. So it just depends on who do you want to serve.
Yeah. Do you look for, I guess, a good deal first and then figure out your medium-term rental strategy? Or would you recommend people start talking to all these insurance companies or maybe hospitals and try to work out contracts first and then look for a property? Like, I don't know how it works, but I'm wondering, like, maybe your recommendation on the sequence of events on how someone should try to implement this.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're new, you probably want to have a house first.
Yeah.
Before. I have heard of people that are really experienced who said, I got a contract and then I went and found a house. Okay. I, rented a house. I arbitraged a house. I did whatever I had to do. Maybe I just went and bought a house because now I have this contract for 6 months.
Right.
So I think if you already feel really comfortable in real estate and know how to do it all, you could probably get away with something like that. But if you're brand new, it's a lot of pressure. Because now you think you have this deal, and then, what if something changes on the insurance side and you went and bought a house and now you've got nothing? I think you probably just need to make sure your house and the numbers work well before you're going out and trying to find tenants.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. This show is called Teach Me Real Estate Investing because selfishly I want to ask you questions about some of the challenges that I'm going through personally. So currently, I have this property in Seattle where I'm house hacking, essentially. It's a triplex. I'm living in one of the units. The other 2 are being rented on Airbnb. I noticed that in the winter months especially, it's my first year, so I haven't gone through a full year yet, but when I first listed it at the end of summer, I thought it was doing really well. And now in the winter months, it's slowing down quite a bit. So I have considered the medium-term rental strategy as well. But so someone had reached out to me yesterday, actually, on Airbnb saying, hey, I'd like to rent out your place for 4 months. But they wanted a slightly lower rate And as you know, Airbnb has a bunch of fees associated with it, right? They take like, I think it's like maybe 10-15% from the guest and then another 3.5% from the host. And so the difference between what I'm earning and what the guest is paying is quite significant. So, them wanting a lower fee, I wasn't really able to provide that to them because the amount of money that I would be getting in my pocket, it wasn't worth it, right? Have you ever, or I guess, like, what would be your recommendations? Like, I guess one thing I considered is maybe taking them off the Airbnb platform, and maybe doing a lease or something like that with that the guest, essentially. Is this something you've done in the past? Like, do you have guidance around maybe going off the platform, or maybe what that would look like?
Yeah, so I would recommend that you go back to them immediately and try to get them to just book a month.
Okay.
And you can phrase it like, make sure you like the property and we'll extend after that and that you like the area and everything. But once you have their details of them booking, then you can call them and say, if you like it, let's extend off the platform. So I never want to steal money from Airbnb. Like, I would never just book fully off the platform without them, like cutting them out. I think that's not cool. But if you're going to do something really long term, I can see the value in eventually leaving the platform. So that's what I would probably do. And I think there is seasonality. You're going to feel that. So one of the hybrid models that we talk about is really utilizing the MTR strategy when you're in your slow months. So for you in Seattle, I imagine it started slowing down like right at the end of October. And that I would have been planning that ahead, that I would have already been looking for a medium-term tenant probably in October or mid-October and getting them set up for November 1st. And then trying to have 3 to 4 months or something like that to ride you out until spring where it starts picking up again. So I think that's a great move if you can get back to that tenant. So hopefully they're not gone.
I'll reach out to them.
I would be like, literally pause this recording, go call them up, because there's definitely been some changes since the recession has started. And I just am seeing a little more vacancy around. I'm hearing about it. And so if you can get a great tenant in for 4 months, do it.
I guess the opposite question, slightly opposite. I've also had people reach out to me on Furnish Finder, but in the summer months. And in the summer months, those are the months that I'm counting on for Airbnb. So what would you recommend in that situation? Should I just jack up my price and say, hey, like, my property would earn me somewhere close to this? Like, the only reason I would rent it to a medium-term rental tenant is if I'm able to earn, at least close, to that. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a great way to do it. I mean, what I have done is that if I already have a tenant in place and they're extending, I'm not going to kick them out because it's June. And, you could. And I think some people do. But I've made enough money over the years that I understand the value of just having a tenant that is, paying on time and doing, like, taking good care of the property. So I'm okay with that. But I'm not looking for tenants on Furnish Finder during those really high months. I'm hoping that they're going to come through Airbnb, and even if it's just somebody who books 1 month, they'll pay, $4,000 instead of $2,500. I'm really happy with that. So you could put it on Furnish Finder and then just list your price differently, like change your pricing that is there. But you may not find as many people through Furnish Finder because they are generally looking for a deal there.
That's what it's just I guess I don't know if Furnish Finder lets me dictate my pricing per month, but essentially it was priced somewhat lower just because it's the winter months, but then they're reaching out to me for the summer, and those I guess are not making as much sense to me. The other question I have is around insurance, right? So if I put a long-term tenant in here, I would get I have my homeowner's insurance, but the tenant would get renter's insurance. If I have a short-term guest here, Usually Airbnb has like the air cover. I've never used it. I don't know how good it is, but I understand there's some level of protection that you get if the guest damages things inside the house. But
Yeah.
what happens in a medium term rental situation? Let's say I find someone through Furnished Finder, I decide to have them here for 3 months. Uh, is it similar to the long term rental where they get renter's insurance? But yeah, I guess, do you have guidance around the insurance?
Yeah, so I mean, basically, we're working off a security deposit. So we generally take $1,000. We try not to make it the same as 1 month because these people are traveling so frequently. You know, they might live in 3 or 4 different homes in a year. And so they might have a deposit somewhere else and then have to put in a deposit with you. And so I don't want to be a big strain, but I
Right.
want it to be enough to cover us. So depending on the size of the home, it's usually around $1,000, maybe it's 1,500 or something.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of how we do it. And then we do write up a lease, and the insurance that we have for a medium term rental is just long term rental insurance. It's the same kind of landlord policy that we would have otherwise. If you do a short term rental, though, you do get specific short term rental insurance, and it is different. So keep those in mind. I don't require renter's insurance. You could do that, but I don't.
Okay. So you
It's
just
just one
rely
more
on,
hurdle.
yeah, you just rely on the, I guess, the deposit, right? If something
Yeah.
does go wrong. Okay. That sounds good. Yeah, this was really helpful. I think, like, especially because I'm going through these challenges myself. I think, I'll probably take some of the advice that you've given me and consider doing a hybrid approach of, like, in the summer months where it's going well, I'll do short-term rental. In the winter months, consider a medium-term rental. For
Yeah.
folks who are listening to this episode and are inspired and they want to get started in real estate investing, do you have tips or advice for them on how they can get started?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm going to say that our book is a really comprehensive way to kind of
Mm-hmm.
help you step by step because sometimes you just need someone around who's done it before. So, if you're new to real estate investing and you're just finding it on the internet, go find a community somewhere. It can be a community online, even. There's a lot of really good Facebook groups or meetup groups. You can
Mm-hmm.
find those and then do them in person. But you need to find people that are already where you're wanting to go and they can kind of help you along the way. Generally, real estate people are really helpful
Yeah.
and they're like open and they'll tell you everything. And that's really the best way to figure out how well something does in a certain market and everything is actually talking to people who are already doing what you're trying to do.
Mm-hmm. I do have one more question about medium-term rentals. When I'm underwriting a property for medium-term rental, or let's reverse back a little bit. If I'm doing a long-term rental, usually I can look at Zillow, see what other properties are going for. If it's a short-term
Yeah.
rental, usually you have like AirDNA or other tools like that where it'll like estimate how much revenue you can expect. For medium-term rentals, do you have recommendation on how people can estimate how much their property can go for?
Yeah, so some of these prediction subscriptions like AirDNA, they're starting to roll out monthly pricing kind of guesstimates, I
Mm-hmm.
guess. I don't think AirDNA has it, but there's another one. Is it Market Minder or something? If somebody really wants to find it, reach out to me. I'm just not thinking of it right now. But
Right.
generally, the way that I do it is twofold. I get the AirDNA price, so using just their free rentalizer tool, and then dividing by 12 months, I kind of figure out a rough idea of like what I want to make per month. And I'm shooting for that in general because you can make just as much as a short-term rental, sometimes more with the medium term. But then I'm also going to Furnish Finder and I'm looking at comps. So you can use the map and you can search your city and you can really just zoom in and even look through people's photos and say, okay, my place is nicer than that, more updated, I have better
Mm-hmm.
furniture or not, and get an idea of what they're charging. But it's definitely not a perfect science. This is kind of still a new industry. And so the technologies haven't fully caught up to us
Yeah.
yet.
Okay. Yeah. I'm curious, what are the next steps for you? What I guess, longer term, but like, for 2023, like what do you have planned in the near future?
So we have a medium term rental course coming out in March. So running our first like beta group is going to be really exciting. So if anyone's interested in that, definitely reach out to us. I'm wanting to be on a TV show, so
Okay.
I'm just kind of putting that out, manifesting that. I may write another book. I'm kind of in discussions about that. So maybe taking this year and learning as much as I can, being a sponge, and seeing that there is a whole deeper level of this medium term rental space that I think people need to know about. So
Right.
really trying to figure all that out so that I could share it again. But hard to know yet.
Yeah.
It's still early days.
Yeah, that's exciting. So what is this TV show going to be about that you want to be on?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm open. If somebody had an idea that's better than what I've got, that's fine. But we were kind of thinking it could be like just one of those shows where people go and look at 3 homes and then they pick one and buy it. But then we take it a step further and we furnish it for them to make it a medium term rental. So
Okay.
it would be like a show with investors and teaching people how to invest in real estate. And then I have a designer that I work with on all my properties. And so it would be us together. And we have a really good dynamic that would be very funny, I think.
Yeah. I can't wait to watch
Yeah.
it.
Oh, good. Yeah, well, I'll let you know.
Yeah. So if people want to connect with you, follow you on social media, where can they find you?
Yeah, so I'm the most active on Instagram
Okay.
at Zeona McIntyre, just my name. And I have a website, zeonamcintyre.com, so that has all the info for the MTR course. But I've also got YouTube, and there's lots of ways. So reach out, and we'll help you get to the right place.
Yeah, sounds good. And if folks want to connect with me, they can find me on Instagram or YouTube at ISOGotThis. I learned a lot today. It was really great talking to you. Thank you so much for, taking the time to spend with us today.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, that is the end of the episode. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. It would really help my mission of teaching more people about real estate investing. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one.